I want to talk about David Lynch, who, after I read your piece in Esquire, was it Esquire? No, Premiere. I interviewed David Lynch. You never got to interview David Lynch.
Well, I said from the outset, it's the reason they let me on the set of all the other journalists, is I was the only one who said he did not, in fact, want to interview David Lynch.
Why did you want to go observe David Lynch?
I found, you mean why did I not want to interview him? Or
no,
why
well, why was David Lynch interesting to you as the subject of a magazine piece?
For me, the number of film directors who get national distribution in this country who are truly interesting as artists is very, very small. And Lynch was one of them for me. I've been interested in Lynch's films for a long time, and actually in grad school, I think there's a thing about this in the essay. Blue Velvet came at a time for me when I really needed to see it, and it helped me a lot in my own work. And then after that, I went and found Eraserhead and have sort of followed this guy's career, and I find him instructive and useful to think about, for whatever that's worth.
Did you like the movie Lost Highway?
I have not seen the movie Lost Highway. I've seen the rough cut of Lost Highway or scenes. They let me go in and sit in what I believe to be David Lynch's personal editing chair, and look at on the little monitor and see, which was the thrill of my life. But I've been on this tour, and even though I'm in big cities, I have not yet gotten to see it. And I'm kind of terrified because there's a big part of the essay that talks about what the movie's about. And if indeed the movie is nothing like that, I'm going to look. Yeah.
When he was here, I asked him about what was Lynchian. And I took that right out of your piece.
And I'm sure he just looked at you and blinked very slowly.
Well, he didn't have a great answer, because I don't think he thinks that way. He obviously doesn't think that way.
There's a part in the essay that kind of does this academic, let's unpack the idea of Lynchian, and what Lynchian means is something about the unbelievably grotesque existing in a kind of union with the unbelievably banal, and then it gives a series of scenarios about what is and isn't Lynchian. Jeffrey Dahmer was borderline Lynchian.
Borderline.
Well, the refrigerator. And actually what was Lynchian was having the actual food products next to the disembodied bits of the corpse. I guess the big one is, a regular domestic murder is not Lynchian, but if the man, if the police come to the scene and see the man standing over the body, and the woman, let's see, the woman's 50s bouffant is undisturbed, and the man and the cops have this conversation about the fact that the man killed the woman because she persistently refused to buy, say, for instance, Jif peanut butter rather than Skippy, and how very, very important that is. And if the cops found themselves somehow agreeing that there were major differences between the brands, and that a wife who didn't recognize those differences was deficient in her wifely duties, that would be Lynchian. This weird confluence of very dark, surreal, violent stuff and absolute, almost Norman Rockwell, banal American stuff, which is terrain he's been working for quite a while. I mean, at least since Blue Velvet.
You think the failure of Dune was good for his career? Because it made him understand a system that he didn't want to be part of.
What happened to Lynch with Dune, and now I'm getting a lot of this from my research, which was published stuff. It's not like, Mr. Lynch and I had coffee and he told me this stuff. But Lynch's career for a while had a kind of Richard Rodriguez arc to it. Eraserhead, like El Mariachi, this enormously cool independent film, and it attracts the attention of people with money. The first one is Mel Brooks, and Brooks hires him to do The Elephant Man. And The Elephant Man is a fantastic, fantastic film, and its lighting and atmospherics, nothing else. So anyway, because of that, Dino De Laurentiis hires him to do Dune, and now Dune at the time is equivalent to what like Twister or The Rock would be now. It's this enormous. This is a product, and there's all this money at stake. And Dune itself, the novel, I don't know if people read it anymore, but it's tremendously complicated science fiction novel. Anyway, so you don't need an hour-long narrative of this, but Lynch does the thing and doesn't do it all that well, but what really happens is the money men come in and they cut, like, I think 35 minutes out of the movie, and it renders the movie incoherent. I mean, literally incoherent. And it was a huge flop, and I think Lynch ate the flop and decided that what he wanted to do is he wanted to, rule over small films rather than serve large corporate ones. I mean, he was really one of the first, we see a lot of them now, the, Cinemax and Fine Line directors, these kind of independents, who are doing stuff a little out of the mainstream but still getting national distribution. As far as I can tell, Lynch really pioneered that ground. He was really the first one to be doing small, eccentric films that got a very wide release, with Blue Velvet being the best example. And this may be entirely false. I mean, I'm not a film scholar.
But you like movies.
I do like movies.
A
Front
lot.
row. Yeah.
Okay, me too. English Patient.
You're seriously asking me for my view on English Patient? I thought English Patient was an extremely well done, slick commercial movie. I thought it was beautifully lit. I thought, the desert looks like a body.
It was David Leanian for you.
I thought it was like David Lean's Lawrence of Arabia in some ways. I felt the story was somewhat predictable, and some of the sentimental stuff at the end seemed to me like stuff I'd seen 250 times before. But in all fairness and in all respect to Michael Ondaatje, I felt the same way about the book, which I actually really like Ondaatje's poetry. He's got a book called A Few Tricks I Can Do with a Knife that's really good. I didn't think The English Patient was his best book.
But it's a good book.
And it's an outstanding book.
Yeah, and the film is interesting in that it's not the book.
That is
and he
difficult to argue with.
Well, no, but it's not. I don't mean to make a simple point, but it is a perfect example where somebody makes a film that's every bit as good as the book.
It's a
by
neat
not doing the book.
A Godfather thing.
Yeah, a Godfather thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
How about Shine? I'm going to go down 3. Dave.
A lot of this is going to get cut out, right?
Perhaps, but I'll make the decision as to what's cut out.
It's funny. I'm totally intimidated. I'm sitting next to the guy in the green room, and not saying a word. Then the minute he leaves, I start haranguing his publicist. The thing that interested me about Shine was besides being a manual for how to build a mentally ill child, all the early adult stuff, I thought it was absolutely incredible up until the end. And then I just thought the causes of the dysfunction and the symptoms of the dysfunction are unpacked with such complexity and such care. And the ending, charming though Lynn Redgrave is, just the move from the time he becomes a hit in the bar to the time Lynn Redgrave meets him to the time she consults an astrology chart to marry him, to his very moving Mr. Holland's Opus-like performance at the end. It's terrific, but it happens at about 10 times the speed that all the other stuff did. So the thing I was asking the publicist is, did the money guys or the studio guys make him wrap the ending?
And they said no.
They got a little bristly. They got a little bristly. And I am not trying to bust on Shine.
Which I know you're not. But what we're trying to do here is just understand you by talking about things other than your work. And we'll come back to
Unfortunately, most of the things that are leaving my mouth seem to be mean.
What?
Most of the things that are leaving my mouth seem to be mean.
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Why wouldn't you talk to Scott Hicks in the green room?
Because
what?
Well,
you're a big deal writer.
Well, I don't know. I think of myself as the schmuck in the green room.
Well, you may be the schmuck in the green room too, but
Well,
but why would you turn to him? Did you have no curiosity to turn to him and ask the filmmaker the question that you were curious about?
I think if I had known him or he was my friend, I would have been comfortable just doing it I think part of it is going to readings. You do a reading at a bookstore, and then afterwards there's usually a Q&A, which it's very difficult to get out of. I've tried all kinds of things. And many of the questions have this kind of belligerence about them. Did you think that this ending was weak? And part of you kind of goes, well, why don't you and I go have supper and we'll talk about this? You don't just come at somebody with a question like that. What I was trying to do is, I don't know anything about filmmaking from the perspective of making a film. What I know is watching them as a movie fan. And Pauline Kael is sort of my idol this way. She was the fan. She was the consumer. And her authority came from that. I felt as if the ending of Shine had been mucked with, either to get the time down, or the guys said, the producer said, this is we need a more upbeat ending. And I was curious to know whether that was true. And it turns out no. It turns out Hicks, apparently the story got really happy really fast in real life, and that's the way it happened.
Can you imagine yourself writing a screenplay? Have you tried?
No, I haven't tried. I've talked a couple times. My best friend writes mysteries, and he and I have talked about doing a screenplay. I think I would have a very difficult time writing something that is product that other people would mess with. And the amount of money that's at stake in movies, and the amount of the dispersal of responsibility for the thing, the director, the actors, the producer, in order to do, writing is very difficult for me, and it takes a lot of time and energy, and once I've done it, it's my thing. I can't imagine putting in the time and energy to do a good screenplay. Something like what David Webb Peoples can do. He's a screenwriter I think is really, really superb.
What's he written?
He's written Blade Runner, and he wrote Unforgiven, the Clint Eastwood Western.
Did you like it?
I thought Unforgiven?
Yeah.
I thought Unforgiven is the first really smart Western since, I don't know, early Peckinpah.
I did too.
Like,
I loved it.
What's interesting is I don't know a single female who likes the film. It's very odd. I've talked to all these people about Unforgiven.
It's interesting
and
to
I
say
think
that
females think Western, it stinks. And if you can get them to watch it, it's not a Western at all. I mean, it's a moral drama. It's, it's Henry James, basically. But it's very odd.
My girlfriend and I, Amanda, hates the film. And it's the one film that I just have a wider difference with her than any other film that we've seen together.
Yeah. If I were going to try to do something, I'd want to do something like that. But that was also an enormous success story, luck story. David Webb Peoples, a reclusive, weird screenwriter, I don't know much about him. This script had been shopped around for years, and finally Clint Eastwood bought it. And Clint Eastwood's got enough juice to go, okay, I'll star in it, so they'll make it. This was a weird Western. This is very cerebral for a Western. And I think the only way that it could have got made was if a star director was willing to do it. And the thing about it is, I think for every script like that gets made, there've got to be hundreds of these really intelligent, cool scripts.
Absolutely. There's not somebody that comes along who has the power to get it made.
Right. Or else it gets worked on by the rewrite guys, and John Gregory Dunn's got that whole book, Monster about, they're working on the Jessica Savage story, which became, what was it, Up Close and Personal, which was a film so bad, it doesn't even have charm. Some things are so bad that they're enjoyable. This was worse than that.
It was.